And a very good Sunday morning to you, Grenada, and the rest of the world. It is the 10th day of February, and a beautiful morning. And apparently, not just here, but based on a little note I just saw here on the shout box, Rumble chat, it's also beautiful out there in Carriacou this morning. Kind of breezy, so says Dennis, but we'll get to that in just a wee bit. My dear friends, I'm glad that you're able to join us. Let us be thankful that we have life, still have a roof over our head. Sure that some of you have already had brekkie, and yeah, at least you do have a meal, eh? Thank you, thank you. A lot of people are awakening this morning to desperation. They've got nothing, nothing. Let us be thankful and always remember to gravitate to every opportunity we have to help someone in need. So far this morning, kind of quiet there on Facebook. I haven't seen anybody yet, but I know that they're going to be here in droves as the morning goes on. We're just, 2 minutes into the program. So we're going to move ahead anyway and get right into today's rundown, as always. We will begin with a reading from the Holy Scriptures. And I do believe that we have something this morning. Yes, I do believe that we have something this morning from Little Angel. Just let me scroll down here for, yep, there it is. She is here this morning, Little Angel. And as far as the editorials are concerned, we do have two for you this morning. Kudos to the West Indies, so says the Grenada Advocate. And by the way, I wouldn't be at all surprised if I see some scarcity this morning, because you know what? Windies are back in action, eh? So that's the editorial from the Grenada Advocate. Kudos to the West Indies. The new today is captioned, 45 years later. They're taking a look back at the last 45 years. And both very interesting editorials. Both very interesting. Now, this is where things start getting, I guess you might say, a little bit complex. Yeah? We've got a couple of interviews. Well, we got an interview this morning. And it's going to be about the road to climate change. Yep. There's a gentleman I've known for an awfully long time. He is Grenada's focal point, the lead focal point on climate change. His name is Dr. Spencer Thomas. Haven't been seeing too much of him in the past little while, but he's going to be talking with us this morning electronically. I do not expect him to come sit here with me this morning. But he's going to be talking with us by Zoom about the road to climate change. And at some point this morning, we're also going to play you a segment from this past week's post-cabinet briefing, in which you will see Senator Simon Steil. He's the minister with responsibility for climate resilience. And he was outlining to the media on, I think it was on Tuesday of this past week, where Grenada stands as far as the climate change movement is concerned, what we are doing. So I get the feeling that things are starting to accelerate. Keep your pinkies crossed. And that's going to take care of our interview. Now, our main feature today is captioned, Former Attorney General claims Integrity Commission's investigation into the MNIB is unlawful. Now, first of all, who's the former Attorney General? A gentleman by the name of Cajecton Hood. Mr. Hood has been with us in the past, a long time ago. Haven't seen him in a while. But apparently he's now the attorney representing a gentleman who is under investigation, former chief executive officer of the Marketing and National Importing Board. And he has some concerns, which I learned about a couple of days ago. And I thought, hey, here's a good opportunity to get Mr. Hood back here. So at about 10:30 this morning, he's going to be sitting in that chair right next to me, and I'm looking forward to that. So while the rundown may seem a little bit short, don't be surprised. I may have a couple of things up my sleeve that I will pull out before noon today, and I certainly hope that you'll be able to make it. Always happy to see you spend the full 3 hours with us, but in the event that you cannot, go right there to the GrenadaBroadcast.com website, which, by the way, is where you are right now, if I'm not mistaken, except for those of you who went directly to Facebook. And one, you can watch us live on Grenada Broadcast. What you're seeing there is actually the same feed that the folks who are on Facebook are seeing. After the program, we're going to be putting it up on YouTube, and we're still working on getting YouTube live, eh? Time will come when both Facebook and YouTube will be live. That's another choice you'll have. And as you know, for some time we had dropped our audio-only feeds on YouTube and Facebook. You get to watch, and on Grenada Broadcast. But there are three other feeds that we have: Radio Genre, Radio Garden, and TuneIn. They're back. They're back. As you look at your homepage there this morning, our homepage, Grenada Broadcast, you'll see those platforms all listed. And you simply click on the one you want to use. Just in case you're having hassles with one, just click on the other. Takes you automatically to another. Okay? So, pilgrims, that's what we got lined up for you this morning. Now, I'm going to take our first little break, and we'll come on back with, or should I, hold on a minute. Why don't I say good morning to our friends who are already showing up there on Facebook. Anthea Rillo is saying, good morning, George and all. Goodbye, George. Off to work. Off to work I go. Well, Anthea, well, yeah, I guess, some places it's impossible. Got people keeping an eye, Big Brother's keeping an eye on you, so you're not able to have your little smartphone. Because you can watch us on your smartphone. Well, simple. Take us along with you. Ella May, hello, Ella May. She's saying frigid weather in Missouri. Really? Ella May, one of these days, before I move on to the great beyond, I hope to visit the state of Missouri again. Spent about a month there. Geez, let me see. Must have been 2000. I think it was about 2000. It was either 1999 or 2000. Spent about a month out there, being taken around the state, giving my testimony. And that was quite an experience. You got a beautiful little state out there. And we're still hoping that you're going to come on back, pay us a visit sometime. Kipling Francis is saying, please don't forget to share the live. Thank you, Kipling. Yes, everybody, share. Would appreciate that. Oswin Lewis is saying, good morning, everybody watching from Barbados. Hello, Bimshire. Nice to see you with us this morning. Jackie, hey man, Jackie is there. And she's saying good morning to you folks. And Rachel Pace is saying, at work, she's saying good morning. At work, LGA, New York. I take it you're at LaGuardia, huh? See, somebody at work is watching on the smartphone. Folks, oh, here he comes, Mickaman Alexander, saying good morning to you folks as well. I think that's it for the time being there on Facebook. Once again, nice of you to join us. Let's take our first little break and we'll come on back and get started with this week's edition of The Buzz.
Together with you, our customers, we energize our community.
Together with you, we energize our economy.
We are working together to give our nation a better tomorrow.
With you, we energize our future. Together, we energize our nation.
Thank you for partnering with us as we energize our Speyside.
Grenlec, energizing our Grenada.
Grenadian General Insurance Company, strength and stability. Grenadian General Insurance Company, tell your friends, tell your family. We cover householders comprehensive, motor and even fire too. Contractors all risk burglary, public liability, professional indemnity, directors liability, and wait, we still have more. Come and find out more what you're waiting for.
We are located on Scott Street, St. George's. For more information, call 440-2434.
Tell everybody.
I'm always on the move. Training, traveling, competing.
A commemorative postage stamp.
So it's good to know I have Core Bank in the palm of my hand.
Introducing e-banking, one of many customer convenience services from Grenada Cooperative Bank, and there's more to come.
It's swift, simple, and secure.
Welcome home.
Well, we're back, and Rachel has now confirmed for me that LGA is LaGuardia. Yeah, thank you very much, Rachel. Not too far from there is Peter Bishop, who's saying good morning from Long Island. And Marshall, I hope I'm pronouncing this name properly, Marshall Dollars Lewis. Is that your real name? And are you the Marshall Dollars Lewis who is so active, social media? Sometimes I do read your stuff whenever I'm glancing through Facebook. Try not to spend a heck of a lot of time on Facebook, but I do get around there, and I've seen your stuff. Congratulations. Coylan Nash is saying, good morning, Mr. George. I'm listening. How are you? Well, Coylan, man, I'm on top of the world this morning. Feeling good to be alive. Feeling good to be alive. Nice to see you folks. It's now, let's see here, 14 and a half minutes after 9 o'clock Sunday morning. Let's get into this week's edition of The Buzz, and we begin, as we always do, with a reading from the Holy Scriptures. And this morning, we begin with the second book of Corinthians, chapter 9, verses 6 to 13. Remember this: whoever sows sparingly will also reap sparingly. And whoever sows generously will also reap generously. Each of you should give what you have decided in your heart to give, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. And God is able to bless you abundantly, so that in all things, at all times, having abundantly, having all that you need, you will abound in every good work. As it is written, they have freely scattered their gifts to the poor. Their righteousness endures forever. Now, he who supplies your need will also supply and increase your store of seed, and will enlarge the harvest of your righteousness. You will be enriched in every way, so that you can be generous on every occasion. And through us, your generosity will result in thanksgiving to God. The service that you perform is not only supplying the needs of the Lord's people, but is also overflowing in many expressions of thanks to God. Because of the service by which you have proved yourselves, others will praise God for the obedience that accompanies your confession of the gospel of Christ, and for your generosity in sharing with them and with everyone else. That reading from the second book of Corinthians, chapter 9, verses 6 to 13. Take a little glance here. Back to my right, take a look at Facebook. Reese Francis is now saying good morning, Mr. Grant, and our lovely Grenadian people. Reese, you guys keep calling me Mr. Grant. Hey, George. Thank you. Pilgrims. Now, feedback section. Here comes Little Angel. Little Angel is saying today, according to Paul J. Alisi, quote, there are two sides to every story, and the truth usually lies somewhere in the middle, unquote. There is truth in the statement, and the statement which reads, quote, the truth will always be the truth, even if no one believes it, unquote. What matters is who knows the truth, who is interested in it, who yearns for it, and who is willing to tell it. The foregoing statements were made while considering the experiences of people who currently live in Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique, Venezuela, and the United States of America. Grenadians are beginning to admit that many questionable statements on matters of national importance have been made to them time and time again, and for much too long, locals have been misled into believing what is not true. Leaders in and outside of Venezuela continue to make conflicting statements related to that country's current crisis, and oftentimes the media in the United States is known to be fact-finding, fact-checking statements made by President Donald J. Trump. These are the realities which exist in these and many other parts of the world. But the question is, why? Why statements made by those who are expected to lead are often questionable, conflicting, and have to be fact-checked. Is there anything genuine about making questionable statements? Who will benefit from them? And whom to blame? Another observation, which is also a fact, is that in recent times, democracy and the rule of law have been eroded in many parts of the world today. It is also noticeable that within societies, the minority is in control of the majority. And what is good for the goose is no longer good for the gander in several places, like Grenada, Venezuela, and the United States. In other words, what is good for one is not good for all. Venezuela is rich in gold and oil. Grenada is not as fortunate to have such an abundance of natural resources, but instead, it has warm and friendly people of whom it can be proud. And the United States is said to be ruled by laws. Unfortunately, none of these natural resources, people, and laws are enough to avoid the unfairness, injustices, and ill treatment identified by some and ignored by others within these three nations. If the resources, the people, and the laws won't work for the benefit of a country, the question is, who and what will? Will the truth which exists in these countries set them free? Human beings fail to live the truth. They fail to admit it, and they fail to proclaim it. Instead, they are known to distort, abuse, and misuse the truth for their own selfish gains. It is wiser to identify what is true, accept it, understand it, and learn to live with it. It is also better to know what truly exists before expecting what doesn't. Let the truth be told. Little Angel. Right on, young lady. Thank you very much. Right on. Glenn Andrew Mark has quoted 2 Corinthians 9, 6-13, if I'm not mistaken. Is that what I read a few minutes ago? Thank you very much, Glenn Andrew Mark. Putting it on Facebook so somebody can go on back and check it out a little later on. Okie doke, folks. Let's see here now. 23 minutes after the hour. And hey, looks like we're actually moving ahead a little bit faster than I should have, but that's okay. That gives me a chance to turn here to Rumble Chat. Yeah, man. Shout box on Grenada Broadcast. I see here. There's a note here from Ajlangi, Ajalangi, says, kudos to Valerie Thompson. Agree with you 100%. Hope your words reach the citizens on the ground and not just those of us who have access to the internet. Valerie Thompson. Okay, I think I know what she's referring to. You know, I'm going to try and play that for you a little later on this morning. One day this past week on Good Day Grenada, not just one day, on Independence Day, there's a statement which was issued by a civil society advocate, social advocate, Valerie Thompson. She sometimes goes by the name the Silent Protester. Valerie lives out there in Carriacou, and she presented a statement on Independence Day, which I'll tell you, boy, I'll tell you, that one touched a lot of people. It resonated with a lot of people. And hence the reason I'm really, no promises, but I'm going to try and squeeze that in this morning, depending on how long our session with Mr. Hood goes a little later on. Okay? Okay. Okay. Who else there on Rumble Chat? Kipling Francis is saying good morning, Mr. Grant and Mr. Chester in class. And as always, he's sending his blessings, which we do appreciate. Dennis, well, you know, I was very surprised when I saw this a few minutes ago because Dennis is obviously back in Carriacou. Time to move away from the cold, Dennis. Dennis says, good morning, George and class. It's a breezy, sunny morning here in Carriacou. Looking out over Tyrrell Bay, there is a 3-mast cruise ship at anchor. Christine and Dennis. Yeah, that's, well, that could be one of a number of different ships. I saw one leaving here yesterday, so it's probably up there in Carriacou with you. Probably one of those Windjammer cruises. Yeah, and I understand that there are going to be more of those coming in to Carriacou. Isaac says, good day, George and class, and a very good week to all. Boy, Isaac, I'm looking forward to a great week. Jackie's also saying good morning to us, and we will rise, saying good morning to all, and wonderful to be here. Well, we will rise. Wonderful to have you with us. Rachel Pace back on Facebook is saying hi to Deanna. Who is Deanna? Hello, Deanna. I don't see Deanna. You know, I use an iPad here for controlling the program. It's got a switching software package on it. And fortunately, it does present a lot of the Facebook comments. But apparently, there are some comments that get by and do not appear on this iPad. If I do go to the main computer to look at Facebook, like you are, you will see pretty much all the comments that are made. Okay, Pilgrims, break time, and then we'll come on back and get started with our editorials.
With free island-wide delivery, Hubbard's Building Supplies and Lumber Departments continue to provide the best quality lumber, steel, tiles, plumbing materials, electrical, and general hardware supplies at competitive prices. We continually consult with builders, homeowners, and contractors to improve product range and services. Enjoy discounts where applicable, including the use of credit and debit cards. At Hubbard's Building Supplies, Grandance, and Lumber Department, Caranage, we offer quality service, affordable prices, giving you the convenient, reliable, free island-wide delivery. Call 440-2087 for all your home improvement and building solutions.
Juve chocolates, cocoa nibs, and cocoa balls from Diamond Estate Grenada are now available at Amazon.com, Amazon.ca, Amazon.co.uk, and GrenadaMarket.com. Try the sensational touch of nutmeg and a touch of ginger chocolates, 75% dark and rich, 100% pure cocoa, and their 60% dark and sweet chocolate bars today. Amazon Prime members enjoy free shipping on these orders in the USA, Canada, and Europe. GrenadaMarket.com. When you can't come to the island, the products of the island will come to you.
Hey, Lynn.
Hey, neighbor.
Here's the bill I asked you to pay for me.
How did you get your electricity bill to be so low?
For one, we size our transformers just for what we need. And we unplug transformers, chargers, and other devices when they're not in use. We also replaced our light bulbs with LEDs.
They burn less energy, right?
Much less. I even replaced the seal on my refrigerator door to keep the cold air in.
And Grenlec is always advising us not to open the fridge too often.
That's right. And my family washes and irons in bulk.
With fuel prices changing all the time, how do you know if it is working?
We pay attention to the usage history table. Over time, our average usage has decreased.
So while Grenada can't control fuel prices, I can conserve energy and save money.
Grenlec, energizing our Grenada.
Okay, the cat's out of the bag. The cat is out of the bag. Rachel said a little while ago, hi, Deanna. And I said, you know, who's Deanna? Because I haven't seen Deanna. Well, Rachel has just come back and said Lashley. So now I know who the culprit is. Deanna, did you sneak in through the back door and hope that I wouldn't know that you were there? I'm honored that you're with us. Thank you very much for joining us, and thank you, Rachel. But let me tell you, she's going to get to you. Okay, let's see here. On Rumble Chat, Sandra Beryl says, sorry, the live audio is not restored. Only hearing soft music. Facebook, no good, as do not want an account and have to start one or sign in with one. Well, I'm a little bit surprised, Sandra Beryl, because I'm not hearing music on, in fact, we're not even playing music here this morning. So there's something with your internet connection. We're not even playing music here right now. We were up until about 9 o'clock when the program began, but it's the program. That's what's there right now. So what I suggest you do is refresh. Chester Simon said, hey, Chester, good morning. Chester is coming along nicely. He's saying good morning from Switzerland. And good to see you this morning, buddy. Pilgrims, I think that, Tessa Barry's also now checking in. Tessa's saying good morning. I imagine she's out there in Trinidad. Yeah, let's forget about the comments for the time being, and let's get down to brass tacks, folks. 28 minutes away from 10 o'clock. The editorial, which appeared in this past week's edition of the Grenada Advocate, is captioned, Kudos to the Windies. Congratulations are in order for the West Indies cricket team, which did an admirable job in the Test series so far against England and Barbados and Antigua-Barbuda. The Caribbean side, ably led by Jason Holder, thumped England in their second Test match in Antigua and Barbuda to not only win the series with one match to go, having already thumped or triumphed in Barbados, but captured the Wisden Trophy. The West Indies last won the trophy back in 2009. Congratulations must also go out to the team's management, including the coach and support staff, as well as Cricket West Indies, who would have contributed to the great display by the guys in the maroon caps. It is not very often that we get a chance to laud our cricketers, and for their recent exploits, they need to be complimented. This victory was a clinical destruction of England, rated number 3 in Test cricket ranking. West Indies are rated at number 8. The bowlers stuck to their task in putting pressure on the English batsmen from the time the series began in Barbados. They put the ball in the right places. They were consistent in doing so and were backed by good leadership and excellent fielding. For Caribbean cricket fans, the win also represents some measure of satisfaction, since over the years the West Indies team has been at the mercy of some of the big-name sides in international cricket. India, Australia, South Africa, the same England, New Zealand, and Sri Lanka. The situation was fast developing where the Caribbean public had given up on their team and did not hesitate to write them off, rather than hoping that they do much better in this game of cricket. Indeed, prior to the start of the current series with England, many people had written off the West Indies, suggesting that they did not stand a chance against England with the likes of Joe Root, Johnny Bairstow, Chris Broad, James Anderson, Ben Stokes, etc. Even some cricket writers in our midst were of this view. And 2 weeks ago, we were moved to highlight the negative comments made by former England cricketers Jeff Boycott and Andrew Flintoff of the team. In all fairness to the critics, they had a point, and unless you were mad, you could not suggest that the West Indies would have been able to overcome that England side. Also, the West Indies' last series against Bangladesh was a disaster, having been beaten convincingly. That series, followed by the one-day matches and the T20, capped a miserable performance for the Caribbean side. The victory over England does not mean that West Indies have returned to the top. What it can do, however, is set the stage from which they should try to create more momentum and gradually rebuild West Indies cricket. This victory should also give the players more confidence in themselves, which would allow them to work on the game, prepare to play long innings, and dig in there if we are to get more favorable results. The other cricketing nations will be coming at us because their aim is to play tough cricket when they come up against the West Indies. There you have it, Pilgrim's editorial, which appeared in this past week's edition of the Grenada Advocate. Boy, I am puzzled. I am really puzzled because I see some comments here. I see Dennis Perkins. Something's gone wrong because let me tell you, we ain't playing any music here right now. So there's something wrong with that feed out there. I see Dennis Perkins and Carrie Coos saying, same here, George, only getting music. Catherine Edwards says, she is right, George, I'm hearing the same thing on GB. Shem Simeon says, Chime is only playing music, George. Margaret Francis says, good morning, George, she's right. The audio stream on Grenada Broadcast is playing music. And I'm telling you, folks, there's got to have been some delay that must have taken place overnight because my system, I could show it to you, my system right here is not, I repeat, not playing any music, okay? You go figure. You go figure. Things have been going smoothly for a little while, but obviously it's okay on Facebook because I'm seeing all your comments here. Everything's going fine. We Will Rise on Rumble Chat says, yes, they are correct. Very low output on Chime. I tell you what, folks, forget about Grenada Broadcast. And why don't you try clicking on one of the other platforms like, maybe TuneIn, Radio Garden, or Radio Genre. Because let me tell you, there ain't no music coming out of this studio. Take a look. Shut down. Okay? Can't explain it. Okay, Pilgrims. We're going to... I'll tell you what. Why don't we get right into the editorial from the New Today rather than pausing to take a break? The editorial, which appeared in this past week's edition of the New Today, is captioned, 45 years later. It's a mixed bag for Grenada 45 years after becoming the first island in the sub-regional grouping known as the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States to break colonial ties with Britain and move towards independence. Our showing has been very dismal in the political arena, with sports being the only bright spot on the landscape and providing the proudest moments for the people of the Tri-Island State. As a people, we can look back with much pride and joy to the exploits of track athlete Karani James, the first Grenadian to strike gold at the London Olympics in 2012, when he won the 400 meters, and wicket-keeper batsman Junior Murray, the first of our modern-day cricketers to be selected to play for the West Indies. It is the politics that has beset the island and its development over the years, as Grenada moved from one political crisis to another, with the resultant effect being a massive exodus of people and, in effect, a brain drain to greener pastures, especially the United States. Late Prime Minister Sir Eric Matthew Gary took the bold step to take the island along the road to independence amidst massive opposition from a particular class of people in the country who never accepted the black boy from the north of the island as their leader. It was not surprising that 5 years after independence was attained in February 1974, that Gary was ousted from power in a coup d'etat staged by the left-leaning New Jewel movement of late Marxist leader Maurice Bishop. The armed uprising was popular amongst the anti-Gary forces in the country, as the deposed Prime Minister was accused of having in place a group of armed thugs named the Mongoose Gang, who beat and terrorized opponents of the regime. Gary was also mocked at by opponents, as he had approached the United Nations to undertake a study into unidentified flying objects, which were reportedly often sighted on planet Earth. Bishop was clearly not understood by the ruling class in St. George's, since he turned out not to be the blue-eyed boy they wanted to replace Gary as he plunged Grenada into the Cuban and Soviet orbit. Despite his faults and flaws, history will still record Gary as one of the most outstanding and charismatic prime ministers to rule Grenada, and one who left his mark on the landscape. In the face of widespread criticisms and propaganda from the opposition, Gary took the bold step of inviting a private group from the United States to set up an offshore university on the island through an act of parliament, which was passed in 1976. The country is today much better off financially and economically due to the presence of St. George's University at True Blue, a project which met with ridicule from the NJM left-wingers who had by then replaced the Grenada National Party of Herbert Blaise as the main antagonist against Gary. Today, that Gary-inspired project is at the backbone of the Grenadian economy, with several locals making a more than comfortable living from accommodation provided for the thousands of students who have attended SGU over the years. The other leader who has made and left a mark on the Grenada political landscape is Bishop, despite the unconventional manner in which he came to power through the armed overthrow of a prime minister and his government. The bishop-led People's Revolutionary Government suspended the Grenada Constitution and ruled by decree through a number of people's laws, the first such approach to government in the English-speaking Caribbean. The revolutionary leaders consolidated power with the detention and jailing without charge or trial of a number of opponents deemed as counter-revolutionaries, and engaged in the shutdown of the free and independent press like the Torchlight newspaper and the Grenadian Voice. Under the PRG, Grenada moved closer to the communist bloc as it established ties with the Soviet Union, Hungary, East Germany, and others who were engaged in the struggle for world dominance from the United States and the West. Historians have noted that Grenada's flirtation with left-wing revolution and its downfall marked the beginning of the end for communism, since the process in the Eastern Caribbean island was the first to be rolled back by Washington when then U.S. President Ronald Reagan sent in military troops in October 1983 to restore order following a palace coup against Bishop by a hardline faction of the NGM that was suspected of being loyal to Moscow's version of communism, built on the principle of democratic centralism, as opposed to Bishop's style, which was fashioned after late Cuban leader Fidel Castro. However, Bishop was able to embark upon some positive development that are today proving to be beneficial to the country and its development. The single most important project associated with the revolutionary period was the building of the international airport at Point Salines, with massive assistance from Cuba. Today, the project is key in the development process, the building of hotels, and the current and future growth projection for the tourism sector, which is now overtaking agriculture as the major earner of foreign exchange and job creation for Grenadians. The PRG tried to build an agro-processing sector to create opportunities for people, established the National Insurance Scheme, and also sent many children of poor Grenadians to further their studies abroad in areas such as medicine, economics, agriculture, and other important fields, especially in Cuba, which provided a number of free scholarships. In the last 36 years of our independence, our people have had to undergo severe economic and financial hardships through 2 structural adjustment programs brought on by massive and unwise spending, especially from the new National Party and its Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Mitchell. Ironically, Dr. Mitchell has been the most dominant political figure in Grenada, being in charge of the island's affairs longer than any previous prime minister, and for 19 of the last 24 years. He's now virtually in charge of a one-party state, as the NNP has won the last 2 elections 15-0 against the Congress Party. Unfortunately, the new today cannot point to any project undertaken by PM Mitchell in his reign that can be compared to or have the kind of effect and impact on the improvement of the lives of Grenadians as in the Gary and Bishop eras. Nevertheless, the New Today newspaper would like to wish all Grenadians at home and abroad a happy independence. That, my dear friends, is the editorial which appeared in this past week's edition of the New Today. Yvonne Joseph on Facebook says, "Good morning, George. Yes, music is playing in Chime. I am in Canada. I tried it first before Grenada broadcast." That's news to me. And Bernard Gilbert's also saying good morning. Folks, as I look over here to my right, I see my first guest, Dr. Spencer Thomas. Dr. Thomas. Dr. Thomas, boy, I sure wish we had a little bit more light on your face this morning because your face is very, very dark. But I'm anxious to hear what you've got to say about climate change. And we will get to you in just a wee bit after we take this break. Alrighty, folks, it's now, let's see here, 5 minutes away from 10 o'clock. And this is where we're going to say good morning to this young man, Dr. Spencer Thomas. Hello there, Doc. How are you? I'm not hearing you, Doc. I know he's talking, but Cat lost you. Cat, take your tongue.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine. You hearing me now?
Yes, I'm hearing you now.
Okay, perfect.
Man, look at that bright green shirt. You're on top of the world this morning, aren't you? And look at the smile and everything that goes along with it. So good to see you, Spencer.
Yes.
Before I go any further, there's a note here on Facebook from Peter Bishop. He says, "Give Dr. Thomas my regards, George." You know this character?
Yes, I remember him.
Yeah, you know him. Okay.
We're missing him on the beach on the mornings.
He's one of those
Yes.
beachgoers. Well, good to see you, my dear friend. Good to see you.
Yes.
Dr. Thomas, thank you very much for joining us. I've told our listeners that you're the person who sort of got me wrapped up in this whole climate change thing. Geez, more than more than 20 years ago. And I've actually described you here on the website as Grenada's lead focal point on climate change. Um, I know that you've done a heck of a lot of work over the years. You've been representing this country all over the world. You've been trying to help coordinate things here in Grenada. Um, at what stage are we at right now? Climate change, is it still a major concern? Is it getting worse or what?
Well, George, it is, in fact, very common knowledge now that climate change is one of the most important issues facing not only Grenada and the region, but facing the whole global community. And that's the reason why we have very, very significant negotiating positions on that issue. You have sent me a clip yesterday on the minister. I think it was his post-cabinet briefing.
Yeah.
And I would like to say that the minister is bang on with many of the things that he have indicated there. I think he spoke very clearly on a lot of momentum in Grenada on climate change action. And he also spoke on the whole question of plastic pollution and so on.
Yeah.
In terms of the first question that has been raised in terms of the momentum, I think the minister is bang on in terms of our international profile as Grenada on the international stage. But I would like to caution that the international profile is not enough. It is necessary, but certainly it is not sufficient, and that we have to do some other issues. On the international level, we have a very high profile there. Yes, we have chaired AOCs for over 5 years. We have been heavily involved in the negotiation in a very significant way. We have indicated a lot of partnerships, international partnerships on climate change. There has been a leadership on the technical level over the number of years, 20 years or so. And there has also been leadership on the ministerial level, vis-a-vis the ministers that accompany the technical team on the negotiation. So internationally, we'll be doing fairly well. Our compliance rate is fairly good, although there are some things that we need to do nationally. On the regional level, we also have some very strong profile there in terms of our activities with the 5 Cs, with the Caribbean Development Bank, and OECS and CARICOM. All of those are necessary, but certainly not sufficient. I think the real issue will be on the national level. What do we do on the national level to ensure that we are prepared to build the resilience that the minister is talking about to climate change? Of course, we have done some work. We think that it is necessary to do a lot more. We do have the policy and legislative frameworks have been in fairly good order. We have climate change policy. We have national adaptation strategies and policies. We have national determined contributions, technology needs assessment. We are working on the National Sustainable Development Plan. So all of these are very, very important. But I think a key factor on the national level is the institutional framework and the human resource and the capacity to carry on those issues. I think that is a very key issue. There has been a conflict with this on the whole question of the IMF World Bank program and the austerity in terms of the human capacity and human resources. I think we need to work this out in a very way that can provide the necessary capacity so that we can leverage the funds that are available for climate action and development going forward. I think we need to play that game very, very carefully to ensure that we do have some national capacity to handle the issues relating to climate change. So that will be the key issue in my view. The key issue will be the implementation. We have been able to resource some monies from the Green Climate Fund, and we may be able to resource a lot more, as indicated by the minister. He's bang on that, from the Green Climate Fund and from other, the GEF and other bilateral and other resources. The question will be, how do we implement and our implementation capacity? And that is where we got to spend some effort to ensure that we have institutional capacity and implementation capacity to carry on those very particularly important projects as they come along. There are some projects which are on stream, and the minister mentioned many of them. A critical project we felt when we were looking at the National Sustainable Development Plan was the whole question of resilience in the agricultural sector and the integration of agriculture and climate change, the farmers and everybody. So it requires that level also of national level capacity, not only in the public sector, but in the private sector, in civil society, NGOs and everything. So we need to have a holistic program for capacity building on the national level. That leveraging of national resources is also, and regional resources is also a very important aspect of the climate change programming going forward.
You know,
of course, it cannot be business as usual. And I think that is the central point that we have to carry forward here. We got to do things differently. We got to be more aggressive, and we got to be more conscious of the actions that we take on climate change.
All right, a couple of things, Spencer. First of all, on a number of occasions, you've mentioned the minister, and you're referring to Senator Simon Steil, who was speaking at the post-cabinet briefing, and he's the minister with responsibility for climate resilience. I am going to play his segment a little later on after you and I are through here before the end of the program. However, I want you to spend a few minutes. I have some things I want to come at you with. First of all, for people who are still in a quandary as to the reality of climate change. For example, I see here somebody just posted on Facebook. Kipling Francis says, since global warming is not making headway, they changed to climate change, which they know no one can dispute. But can anyone control climate change? That's his question. My question to you, Spence, could you spend a minute explaining to us the possible impact of climate change on us, Grenada in particular, if we really fail to pay attention, sir, to what is going on?
I think we have to pay attention to what is the possible impacts of climate change. I mean, we can break it down very simple in terms of the various areas of impact. First of all is the whole question of disaster and disaster management. It is very clear from the science that there will be more intense hurricanes and more frequent and intense hurricanes. The impact of this is well known already. We have having been the recipient, I should say, of two significant hurricanes back to back in 2004 and 2005. So we know that. We also know very clearly that climate change and sea level rise is also an issue. Rising sea levels could also have very significant impact on the coastal zone and on the coastal environment. Saline intrusion in the aquifer, that is also a very key issue, and the whole question of the impact on productivity, agricultural productivity in that zone, the whole coastal zone. We know of course about the rising temperatures and what the impact that can be in terms of our own, not only in terms of comfort, but in terms of the agricultural sector and the plants and things getting different signals from the heats and so on. We also know that there are some health impacts of climate change. I mean, we also know the whole question about the rainfall patterns, the significant drought that we are currently experiencing. The literature is very clear that as a result of climate change, we might have to suffer more intense drought, and that might be also accompanied, and will also be accompanied by more extreme rainfall events. So we have both sides to deal with. Too much rain at some point in time that could cause massive flooding and destruction to the coastal zone and also to the coral reefs and so on. And we could also have very intense dry spells, long and hard, which could also have very significant impact on the agricultural sector and on general livelihood. We also have impacts into the marine environment in terms of our coral reefs. it is very clear. And I must recall that the IPCC special report, which has just been released last year, has clearly indicated the impact on the coral reefs, not only in the Caribbean region, but across the world, and significant impacts on our coral reefs as a consequence of rising temperatures and ocean acidification. So these are all the issues that are on our table now. The whole question is, what does that mean for our development? What does that mean for our own livelihoods? And all of these issues are spelling doom for the livelihoods of our people. So it is important that we address the question of climate change. Yes, we must do so, not only as a local community, at a national level and on the regional level, but on the global level. Grenada's contribution to greenhouse gas emissions is basically 0.0005% of the global emissions. Someone will say that is insignificant. So no matter what we do, that cannot affect the global temperature. Of course, that will be the truth. But the question here is we must do something. We must send the right signals, and we must make a commitment on the national level, and that is additive. So that's the reason why small island developing states, of which Grenada is one of them, no matter how small the emissions to greenhouse gas emissions are, they all bang in together because it is important that as a global community that we address this scourge of climate change, because it's not going to affect only one of us, it's going to affect all of us. But it's going to affect us as small island developing states quicker, faster, and more destructive than any place else on the planet. So that's the reason why we are constantly on the ball, constantly in the negotiation. And as I said, if you're not on the table, you are on the menu. So the small island developing states must be on the table of the negotiation to ensure that the small island developing states' priorities are met in the negotiation. And our priorities are very clear. Significant mitigation action, significant adaptation action to ensure that we have a better planet for us to live in and that of the future generation.
You know, better planning, I couldn't agree with you more. I think we all agree it's something that is needed. But I just want to focus here, for example, on the coastline. The coastline is facing two very serious challenges. One, the mangroves. That's a big issue. And the other one is sand mining, Spencer. It's sand mining. You know, supposedly sand mining is not allowed here, and this thing is continuing unabated. So people call me from the north end of the island and complain about this. And there's also another situation which is pretty evident, especially out in places like Liverpool and Bathway. Now, I have to confess, I haven't been to Bathway in years, but I'll tell you, when you take a look at the coastline there and you see a lot of the garbage on the coastline, I doubt whether it's all locally generated. I think that a lot of that stuff is being washed ashore from boats dumping out there. As I speak to you, I see a comment coming in here on Facebook from Mikaman Alexander, and he is asking this question. If we are facing rising sea level, why, and Spencer, I'm not putting you on the spot. I doubt whether you can answer this question. I don't think it's you to answer this, but I'm going to ask the question. Why did those in authority allow an investor to build on the sand? Hello?
Well, I thought you said I shouldn't answer in that question.
No.
But I mean...
But you understand the point the gentleman is making.
Yeah, I think it's a question here. The wider issue that you have raised, that of enforcement, that is an issue. I think that is, regardless of whoever does the action, I think enforcement is a key criteria here. I think we are clearly aware of the impacts of climate change on the national level. I think we know full well that our sand mining impact is very clear for us to see, and that even the people who break that and have sand mining, when they are doing it, they are fully aware that they are breaking the law, and that is an issue. So they deliberately do the sand mining. It's not that they don't know and they cannot feel and see the impact. are not aware of it. So the question is enforcement. And I think it should be enforcement not only for private individuals, it should be enforcement for organizations, it should be enforcement for the entire state apparatus. And I think everyone should obey the rules. We do have clear rules in physical planning, and I don't care. I don't think anyone should break the rules, and we should always have a very good enforcement. Enforcement comes in two ways. One, it could be hard enforcement, and it could be soft enforcement, because we can enforce upon ourselves, our peers and our people. And when we see things happen, we need to say something. We need to advise people, well, look, you should not be doing this. We don't have to wait and get police action every time in enforcement.
Exactly.
So in my view, it takes a holistic approach. It takes a national level approach. It involves everyone. And then once you have that level of understanding across the board, it is very difficult, even for the government, to break the rules. So I think we need to have that national consciousness and ingrain that into our psyche. And we just look at the whole question of pollution, plastic pollution. And I mean, we have a simple, an event, say on Grenada's beach or something like that. And you could see the amount of pollution that is generated. And I think we could do better than that. So those are the issues I think we need to have. So we need to have soft and hard enforcement. And I think that will be the answer to that question.
And let's be fair here. While enforcement is a major issue in this country, let's acknowledge that it's not just when it comes to climate change and protecting our coastline and stuff like that. Enforcement is a problem, period, in Grenada. Now, my next question to you has to do with farming. Is it fair to say, Doc, that climate change is going to bring about a paradigm shift in the way we farm? You know, there's a lot of focus on tourism and everything, you know, but come on, man, listen, tourism goes downhill. We still have to feed ourselves. And so a lot of attention needs to be paid on agriculture. But what is happening here is going to have an impact on the way we farm, isn't it?
Of course it will. I mean, there are significant impacts on that sector. Climate change and water management and water production is very important for the farming sector. We may not be able to depend on rain-fed agriculture as a consequence of climate change in the future. So that's something that we have to take into consideration, the whole question of availability of water for agriculture. And that's a very, very key question. We heard very clearly from some of the farmers that they are confused. They don't know when to plant and what to plant, how to plant it anymore, because they're having difficulty in terms of timing, how the usual sequence of weather patterns and things have been changed. And they are also saying that even the plants are confused. They are bearing any time. I mean, so there are some changes that are taking place, and it's very important that as we go forward, we integrate agriculture and the issues of agriculture into climate change policies and programming. And that's one of the projects that I think is very important for us to look at. The farming community, because again, as indicated in the National Sustainable Development Plan discussion, farming is the bedrock of the Grenadian economy historically and maybe in the future. So we have to pay particular attention to the issue of climate change in agriculture. If you could just take the water sectors alone, that gives you the fundamental issue. Mm-hmm. And then there are also issues relating to how do you manage your internal waterways and all these issues. So there are a lot of issues. So currently, I understand that there is also this whole question of national water policy, which they are currently working on to ensure that these issues and the issues of climate change are integrated into water resources management in the country. So it's a very important question. We still have significant linkage with the agricultural sector and livelihoods. There is no doubt about it, and that many of our people are dependent on agriculture. We might have to have a new type of agriculture, a smarter type of agriculture, which takes into consideration the impacts of climate change.
Just let me get back here to the sea level rise for a minute because I'm sure you're aware that there's a move afoot to make, oh, the phrase escapes me right now, but they want to make St. George model in the Caribbean, a climate resilient city, I think it's called, or something like that. You've heard that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And one of the key elements of that would be the carronage, one of our most prized possessions. Sea level rise could have one heck of an impact on that area, couldn't it? And is it something that concerns you?
Of course. I mean, I think you're referring specifically to the New York University mission that the minister spoke very clearly about. In my humble view, I think we are in a nice place with that project because I think they are making a very good effort to involve the people in the decision making and how we move forward, which I think is a very important aspect of our programming. That the people, the Grenadian population, must be involved in the decisions that we make. The carronage has been identified as a vulnerable area, and you don't have to take long before you can recognize that is in fact true. I mean, and we need to do something about it. In my view, the project is a pre-feasibility at this point, and it's involved a good consultation among the various stakeholders. What will come out of this? What very good stuff will come out of this in the long run, which might be useful for us. For instance, we will be able to have a body of data, which might help us to make more informed decisions on the scientific level, in terms of modeling, in terms of scenario planning, and so on. And we need to get better information as to the extent of the vulnerability of our country and our areas within our country. So it's a very important issue. At the same time, the New York University will leave some capacity on the national level here as a consequence of the pre-feasibility study. So again, we have nothing to lose here. We should be able, at the end of the pre-feasibility study, to be able to be in a better position to prepare a project which is bankable to the Green Climate Fund, to the GEF, and to other donors, as a result of the rigor of the data that might be available and the importance of the scientific underpinning that will come out of this. My understanding is that the university has about 12 persons on the ground trying to get into the psyche of the Grenadian population as to what it is that we want to do, what are our priorities, what are our issues. They did not come with an open slate. They come with some preconceived notions, and they need to test the notions against very sound judgment from the civil society. And I think we are in a good place with that project. Not many projects are of that nature. There are some projects which are baked in Europe and in America and come down here for implementation. I think this one takes a different style, which I think is more appropriate as we go forward, that it must be ingrained, that must come from the bowels of the Grenadian people. Right. And I welcome that university for doing that.
Spence, again, right on the money, but let me ask you this, Spencer. I mean, you've been around this for umpteen years. You're a focal point. Spencer, you will vouch when I say that a lot of money, a lot of time has been spent trying to get the word out about the adverse impact of climate change. But Spence, somehow, you just said here, it's important that the people play a role. But if the people don't really fully understand and grasp the complexity and the importance of this, how can they make a valuable input? How do we get mainstream Grenada? I'm not talking about the technocrats like you and others who sit in hotel rooms and discuss climate change. Excellent sessions, excellent. But the man on the street needs to feel that this is really going to impact his livelihood.
Yeah.
How do we get the message across, Spence?
I think the demonstration effect is where you get the message across. People must see and feel the impacts on their own livelihoods, and to see that the actions that they have to take will be in their own best interest. I think that is where the crux have to really lie. All actions on climate change must relate directly to people's livelihood, even income levels, There is nothing else that you can do. You have to constantly reinforce the points, and people must eventually buy in and see the linkage with their own livelihoods and that of their children. So, and it is a consistent process that has to happen consistently across. You cannot do it today and stop doing it tomorrow.
Thank you.
You got to continuously do that, because it is important that you see the linkages. And it's only when we have that, what you call that critical level of consciousness, that critical mass of people, and that critical level of consciousness is when we can go across and over that hump to ensure that we make a very significant and lasting impact on climate change. We cannot wait until we gone to fix it. We got to fix it now. And the IPCC report has been very clear that that window is very short. So we need to act now and act decisively. So whatever we have to do to get the mass population involved in that, it is very important. Not the technical people only. It's not a technical issue only. It is an issue for development. It's an issue for livelihood, and is an issue for the generation going forward. Let me just tell you what happened in America, and I think we can look at it. Juliana et al. Versus the United States, where 21 youths, maybe the oldest might be in 23 or 24, have taken the US government to court in terms of their activities on climate change, indicating to Mr. Government, US government, that look, you are not doing enough to protect us going forward. This is an active case in the US court system. Juliana et al. Versus the United States. It's online. You can go and have a look at it. And it is people, young people, taking their future into action and saying to the great United States, you need to do more to address the issue of climate change. And if you're not doing it, we're going to take you to court. It's in the court system. You have a look at it. Okay. And that is the kind, I'm not asking here that we do the same, but what I'm saying is we need to be very conscious of the importance of climate change going forward.
And you know, part of that importance, like you were suggesting a minute ago, is not just periodic campaigns. You know, every time a few dollars for public awareness become available, you hear a lot of brouhaha for a month or two, and then it's gone. But you're saying this is something that needs to be mainstream. It's something that needs to be continued throughout the year. It's got to become a part of our lives.
Of course, got to be.
Okay.
And then, I mean, the best way for you to do so, I think, in my view, it is to get down on the sectoral level. Get down into the agricultural sector in the trenches. Get down into waste management areas in the trenches. Get down into energy. Get down into transport. You got to get down into the health sector and infuse climate realities into each of those issues on the sectoral level, so people understand the linkages between their own livelihoods and the issue of climate change. I think we got to get onto that level.
All right, Spence, we're running out of time, but I just don't want to get behind as far as Facebook is concerned. There's some comments here that I want to share with you. Vincent Ignatius Roberts says, Dr. Thomas, are you convinced that this is not mere talk and that the scientific evidence will be taken into consideration for other coastline projects such as Silver Sands Phase 2?
Well, we have to work at it. I mean, I am saying to you, we have to work at it. We have to let the science dictate the actions that we take. We have a fundamental issue here in terms of people obeying the science, and it is not only on the national level, and it's not only on the individual level, but it's on all levels. We have international problems with this, but I think the science is very clear. The vast majority of international climate scientists have ruled on this issue. The IPCC has ruled on this issue. The UNEP has ruled on this issue. Everywhere, World Resource Institute, they have all indicated clearly the fundamental aspect of climate science. So we cannot deny that anymore. We can continue we have to continue to do the work to ensure that we have full compliance on the national level to the aspects of climate change.
All right. He also says here, the people grasp the importance. It's the government who's playing politics with it, and their blind followers are closing their eyes to the reality. Mikaman Alexander says, mangroves in the Piti Calavini area have been destroyed to accommodate a development. Where are those in authority to enforce the laws? Hello, Doc.
Well, as I said, we have to continuously work at it. I think enforcement is an issue. I'm not here to speak on these particular issues, but I'm here to indicate that it is important that we have compliance across all levels across the state to ensure that we have a better future for those that are behind.
All right, Dr. Thomas, here's another comment. He also says the sand mining in the rural area is encouraged by the action or inaction of the government. Kipling Francis says if every country were asked to use their own money to combat climate change, I doubt some countries would be talking about climate change. What say you?
Well, all of this speaks to the same issue, in my view. I mean, very important issue, and I really believe that it is necessary that we make the appropriate action and create the appropriate environment so that we have total compliance across the board on these issues.
Anthony de Riggs says, I think we must be mindful of the fact that Mother Nature has a way of reclaiming its own. I've seen big stones placed in the sea, and then a storm surge pelt them back. When we build close to the sea, we are therefore taking a big risk. And then there is the issue of rising sea levels to make it worse. That boils down to education, doesn't it, Spence?
Well, it's also that is very key also, and creating alternatives for people and providing them with the information as to their own vulnerability in the areas that they choose to live, and creating alternatives for them in case that they are located themselves in a very disastrous circumstances. So, and I think these are some of the very key issues that we need to look at. How we going forward? We have actually should set up, in my view, a very clear zoning issue, zoning based on the vulnerability of serious areas, and to ensure that people that are living in those areas are given an alternative to relocate into into less vulnerable areas. So these are some of the critical issues that we have to take on board. There are a lot of social considerations that we have to take on board also. So it's a total package. We cannot only look at the environmental consequences. We have to also look at the social consequences and also the economic consequences, because if you don't, the environmental consequences and the actions that you take will be short-lived, because it will be trumped eventually by social and environmental considerations. So you have to look at the totality of the impact, and the totality of the impact on the individual level and also on the societal level. So it's an important issue, actually, and one that sometimes we forget. But we cannot only look at one aspect of the impact. You got to look at it in a holistic manner: economics, environment, social.
I got two more important ones here for you. What have you said about the destruction of the oyster beds in Carriacou to build the marina? The permission to mine sand? You know something that's coming out of this conversation? People are talking indirectly about the lack of enforcement, Spencer. Lack of enforcement.
Yeah.
And until
but as I said again, and I want to repeat, enforcement has to be hard and soft. And we need to create the environment where enforcement will be very key going forward, and something which is easier than the present environment. And everyone should be able to be called to account for their action once we have that environment created. And I think we need all to contribute to that, to creation of that environment, which has enforcement as a key aspect: hard enforcement and soft enforcement.
All right. Margaret in New York is saying, and this is in response to something you said a few minutes ago, so why is suing the government good for the USA but not an option for Grenada?
Well, I think we have a lot of options that we can. I mean, USA might be they have a different jurisprudence than us. We have other areas that we can also take. For instance, we could do a lot of capacity building. We could do a lot of information, a lot of a lot of issues, we can also go to the court. I mean, that's your prerogative. The question here is, I mean, cost and impact and so on. But we have to do something different. We just cannot sit on our laurels and it's going to happen. We need to change the environment. And I don't think we could point a finger. I think we all should be contributing. So we should be pointing a finger at ourselves also to make sure that all of us are impacting positively on the environment. So it's not a question about you against me here. Yes, some people might be more prone to do more damage than others, but we all must examine our own and make the adjustment which is necessary to have a better future. So I am saying that we need all to be part of it. We have a very clear issue in the United States right now, which has fundamentally denied the impact of climate change. And I think that's where the suit and the action of the kids are targeting. We do not have such an environment in the Caribbean region. I think all of the governments have clearly indicated the impact and the importance of addressing the issue of climate change. So we're in a different kind of zone, if I may, with respect to legal action, because here you are, we have no denial of that. Even in our constitution and in our major policies and they all have identified the importance of climate change. What we are seeing in the United States is that some of the government itself are denying some of the own scientists from the United States and some of the own policies that coming out of the different scientific organization, even within the United States. So the government has taken a completely different stance towards climate action, as against what we are saying in the region, where climate is a very important aspect, and we are putting systems in place to address it. So the question of enforcement is key. We need to create a different environment so that enforcement has a chance to work, both soft and hard enforcement.
All right, Dr. Thomas, listen, it's really good to see you, but I have to confess, I'm out of time. Now, in the past, you've made several visits to us, and I look forward to having you come back on a number of occasions, because obviously there are a lot of questions here. If you have a chance, take a look at Facebook later on today, and you'll see that a lot of questions that still haven't been answered. So promise me that you're going to come back in the not-too-distant future.
Thank you very much, and all the best.
Appreciate it very much, Spence. Take it easy, my friend. All right, folks, I'll tell you what. There is a lot going on here. I have been trying to keep track of all the comments, but that's tough. Vincent says here, Dr. Thomas, it's all talk. The Kawana Bay Flamboyant will build on the shoreline, and you will say not a word. You have avoided the role of the government in the local practical situation. Margaret says, nice try, Dr. Spencer. And you think that argument doesn't apply to the United States as well? It's responses like that that create the cynicism and the belief that this is all about money. Bob Marichaux says, as a boy, the late E.M. Gary, Prime Minister, promulgated that planting trees in the country, especially Carriacou, promulgated that planting trees in the country, especially Carriacou, and he was laughed at. Can you imagine if the country took his advice? In my opinion, that was his contribution to climate change in Grenada. No one would deny that his vision was a great one. Vincent says, words are cheap. Be an advocate locally. You have an international reputation, but locally, pure talk. Folks, let me take a little break here, and we'll come back. Alrighty, folks, it's now, let's see here, 23 minutes away from the hour. I'm still trying to play catch up here, I'll be honest with you. My next guest has arrived, but I'm going to ask him to bear with me for half a second while I try to sneak a few more comments in. Lincoln Roberts says, the Republicans in the United States don't believe in climate change. That's all politics. It's a serious problem, so we better wake up. Andrea St. B. Mitchell says, that learned duck did a real good dance around some questions. Vincent says, words are cheap. Be an advocate locally. You have an international reputation, but locally, pure talk. Over here on Rumble Chat, Carl Farray says, do elected parliament and cabinet ministers contradict the purpose of checks and balances? Tessa says, a major issue would be the impact on the farming community and food security. Always listening's with us as well. Bernard Maras says, this is academic garbage. Tell them the truth. Educate the Pope of the real reason. And then he puts a link. If you guys want to check that link out, go to Rumble Chat. Good Morning Grenada is saying, we are not responsible for climate change. We have no factories. Our problem is plastic, and that we have to be very mindful of. My dear friends, now do me a favor, take a look. You guys recognize that character over? Look at that smile. Look at that smile. It must be Sunday morning. This, ladies and gentlemen, is Mr. Cajecton Hood. I'm surprised that you remembered how to find this place. It's been a long time since last you were here. How you doing, Kaji?
Well, morning, George, and thank you for the invitation. I've been around there all the time. I pass here every day, actually. So
you pass by here and you don't even stop and say, "Hey, George, what go?"
Well, I know you're a busy man, and I'm a busy man. So.
Yeah, right, Kaji.
So
right,
that's the reason.
Right. Folks, Mr. Hood is here today because he has some concerns, and I learned about those concerns this past week. Just let me pull up both pictures here so we would know exactly what we're talking about. Yep, there we go. He is the attorney who is representing Mr. Rule Edwards, the former Chief Executive Officer of the Marketing and National Importing Board. As many of you know, there's a investigation. I'm not even sure this thing has started. I was told it was going to get started sometime very soon, and we'll find out about that in just a minute. But Mr. Hood was seen on MTV a couple of nights ago making a statement which sort of made my ears stand up, and I thought, hey, better let him come in here and explain to you specifically what his concerns are. Mr. Hood, by the way, is one of our former attorney generals. So, Kaji, start.
Okay, George, I was approached by Mr. Edwards, who had and still has very strong concerns, valid concerns, I dare say, regarding what is taking place. In fact, we have about over a week ago, yes, on the 1st of February, we filed with the High Court an action against the Integrity Commission. We are saying to the court that the Integrity Commission does not have the power to do what they are doing now.
Which is,
well, I'm not sure what they are doing, really, because they claim that they are inquiring into the affairs of the Marketing and National Importing Board for the purpose of determining if there is any wrongdoing, so that later on they could have a real inquiry. And I don't understand that. They are claiming that they have the power of their own initiative to launch that kind of investigation, which the statute does not support. And they are also claiming, the lady chairman said that she is giving all the media houses credit for bringing the state of affairs of the marketing board to their attention, which is pretty odd. So as far as I'm concerned, what I read from her statement and the statement of the board is that, sorry, the commission, is that we saw these newspaper reports, we heard the reports in the media, and therefore that's enough for us to go in and find out what's taking place.
My goodness. My goodness. Are you serious?
This is what she said. And she claims that there's authority in the Integrity in Public Life Act which supports it. I have searched it and read it diligently, and I've seen no such authority. In my view, it is wrong, it's contrary to law, it's arbitrary, and what it does, as far as my client is concerned, it exposes him to, well, he doesn't even know what's happening behind the scenes because it's a private inquiry. He apparently I say, because I do not want to be accused of saying somebody said, he apparently is the main subject of the investigation because the minister went on the media and made certain comments to the effect that the chief executive officer at that time, that was him, over a period of time, would be the subject of inquiries. As a matter of fact, the minister went so far to identify him as working with the government and did say that certain processes would be initiated regarding his employment. George, lo and behold, he was put on leave and then he was fired. We have started a process with the Labor Commissioner. We filed last week with the Labor Commissioner a complaint regarding unfair dismissal with respect to him. Because we are saying he was dismissed based on all of the allegations, and it's improper. But let's get back to the investigations themselves. George, there is no foundation for that Integrity Commission inquiry. The statute provides them with 2 occasions in which they can launch such an inquiry. One, with respect to a declaration that has been surrendered by a public officer, a person in public life, that they are dissatisfied with, they can investigate. Or, if there is a specific allegation of a breach of the code of conduct in the act, the allegation has to be in writing with reasons. Then the commission will look at the allegations and determine whether or not there is merit, and then proceed or not proceed. That's what the act says. There are general provisions where they can investigate public bodies, but it must be read within the context of the other bits of the legislation. So I think it's without foundation, but it's before the court. We're asking the court to stop the investigation because there's a lot of potential danger, further danger, to which our client is exposed. We don't know who's saying what hearsay is happening.
Has the investigation actually begun, Cajecton?
Well, I can only say what the Madam Chairperson said, that they started in August, early August.
No. Because, I mean, towards the end of last year, we were told that the investigation would begin early this year.
I can only tell you what I read or what I heard from the news, because the Prime Minister talked, first of all, a few days before, about having an investigation into Marketing and Board. And a few days later, the Integrity Commission came out and said, well, they have started an investigation, and Mr. Agostini has recused himself. And that was a newspaper report, August, September. So I can only go based on what has been said.
Okay. You know, thanks for confusing me on this Sunday morning, Kaji, because that's exactly what you're doing right now. I'm sitting here listening to you, and I'm asking myself a couple of questions. One, I'm a little bit surprised that this is all happening because they learned about it from the media. That's the first part that really surprised me. The purpose of the investigation, you said here a little while ago that they're investigating to see whether or not they really should investigate.
Whether or not there is something to investigate.
Okay.
Which makes no sense.
Okay, I'm not a lawyer, so I.
No, it's not a matter of a law, George, with respect. Because what if, look at the danger to the public. What if somebody writes a couple of malicious stories about you in the papers? Does it mean that somebody has a right to just come and start digging up into your affairs with no specific terms of reference? The investigation has no terms of reference whatsoever. Isn't that strange?
Okay, I understand your point there. The other one is, why a private investigation? You know, when it was announced by the Prime Minister, I think the Prime Minister said this thing would be investigated, and then we heard that the Commission of it, the Integrity Commission,
yes,
had taken it upon themselves to do this investigation. Yes. What do you make of that?
Confusion. George, in addition to that, put it this way. The Marketing Board was set up by its own act, its own statute. There is a Marketing and National Importing Board Act. In the act, there are specific things that the board of the Marketing Board are required to do. And there are specific things that the said minister is supposed to do. The language is shall. If there is any problems in Marketing Board, the finger must be pointed before you go to the chief executive officer. There is the board, there is the minister, and worse yet, George, there is a provision for the director of audit, a constitutionally configured post, to look at the accounts every single year and report to Parliament. The provision is there. So the board is supposed to, according to the Act, the Marketing and National Board Act, Marketing and National Importing Board Act, 4 years before the end of December, the board is supposed to come together, put together a plan for the next year. The minister is supposed to look at the plan, comment on it, approve it, and then that plan has to be in place for the next year. The board is also supposed to come up with an implementation process for the plan, a monitoring scheme for the plan. And that is supposed to be a yearly process. Not only that, when the year ends in December, by the end of the third month, the board is responsible, according to the Act, for putting together the accounts of the Marketing Board and presenting them to the Director of Audit. The Director of Audit is supposed to review that with dispatch, present it to the Minister for submission to Parliament. So there is a process in place. If you're telling me that 5 years passed and the board was in shambles, who is responsible?
Okay, but what if the board was not reporting that there were issues?
Right. If the board was not reporting, all of the members of the board are appointed by the minister, 9 of them. And they have 2 years terms of service. So if the board doesn't report this year, the minister is supposed to call on the board and say, look, you're supposed to present this thing to me by September. Where is it?
No, but I'm not saying that the board did not report. I'm saying they could have reported,
yes,
but never indicated, hey, we have a little problem here.
No, it's for the minister to determine because he's in control of the board. He looks at the report, he looks at all of these things. Can't he say that can't he see there's a problem?
Not necessarily, Kaji. I mean, if I have to report to you, every year I have to write an annual report. Okay?
No, not just an annual report. Your accounts, all of your accounts, not an annual report. Your accounts.
Okay.
And it comes to you. It goes to the Director of Audit. The Director of Audit didn't pick it up.
So,
the Director of Audit.
You're saying that this is something that should have been spotted by
every year
a trained expert, the Director of Audit.
But the Director of Audit audits all government departments. And in this particular case, the Director of Audit is supposed to report on it with dispatch.
Right. Okay. All right.
So it means that what should have been done over the years was not done. That's the point.
Okay. There was a breakdown.
Yes.
And so you do not necessarily believe the Prime Minister when he indicated that he was not aware
Well, if he was not aware, it means he was not doing what he's supposed to do, because he was supposed to be monitoring what's happened at the board, and he was supposed to make sure that the business plan was delivered to him every year, and that he had his input, and that the plan would have been according to his approval every year. That's what the marketing board act says. He had to personally look at the plan and approve it. If he didn't approve it, he needed to comment.
Is that the business plan section of the
yes, I think it's section
Board
22. Act? Yes, you
Section
have it there,
22,
George.
the annual business plan. I'm trying to find here
The board shall not later than 4 months before the commencement of each financial year, and in such form as the minister. You see that?
Yeah.
So the minister is going to tell them how he requires it. So it's not a matter of an arbitrary plan. He tells them what he wants. And then he comments on what he presents, what is presented to him. And they have to go back and fix it to suit him. And that's 4 months before the financial year starts. So the financial year starts with a business plan approved by the minister, with the board giving him an implementation plan.
Okay. Mr. Hood, notwithstanding the fact that there was a public outcry when it was announced that the Integrity Commission would be handling this investigation, there's also the issue about timing. I mean, this is something we heard about October, November last year, about, you know, the investigation that would take place. And here we are today, what is it, the 10th of February, and there's still some uncertainty in my mind, obviously in yours too, as to whether or not this investigation is underway. And assuming that it isn't, why has it taken so long? I mean, you identify some wrongdoing, you say there's going to be an investigation.
No, they have not identified any wrongdoing. That's the point I'm making.
No, it's an allegation.
No, there were certain specific allegations that your namesake, George Rome, and his papers would have presented. Certain specific allegations. So I don't know if that's what they're investigating. That's the point. There are no terms of reference. So we don't know what is happening. We don't know who they're talking to. There are no safeguards in terms of who is present. It's not a public inquiry, so we do not know what is taking place.
If there are no terms of reference, like you're saying here right now, doesn't that bring into question the integrity
of the Integrity Commission?
I wasn't going to say the integrity of the Integrity Commission. I understand why you did. I was going to say the integrity of the report that's going to come out of all of this. Same thing. Same thing. Okay. No.
And then what disturbed me even more, George, is that up front, without having done anything at all, they said we're going to publish a report to the Governor General, Prime Minister, and the Director of Public Prosecution. Are you presuming there's criminal activity?
As a former Attorney General, I imagine that you would be pretty astute when it comes to the rules and regulations, especially when there's an existing act. Is that why you've sort of gone ballistic here? You're not a very happy camper right now.
No, I'm not happy, because I think the Integrity Commission was set up for a specific purpose. I think it's a clear evidence of abuse of the intention of the Integrity Commission. And I've been very, very, very frank about it. The Integrity Commission, and when you look at the act itself, George, in 2013, there were amendments made to the Integrity Commission Act. In fact, the old act was revoked in 2013, and this new act replaced it. And there's the act says exactly what the Integrity Commission is set up for. Dealing with declarations, and if there is a case where there is a breach of the Code of Conduct, and the Code of Conduct is spelled out in detail, then the intention is that if you know there is a person in public life who is doing certain things that they should not be doing, you refer to the Code of Conduct and you specifically say to the Commission, look, Jack Thomas, who is so-and-so is doing so-and-so contrary to so-and-so and so. That's the intention.
You know, Kaji, I hear your point. I hear your point. But, you know, people who are listening and watching you right now are saying to themselves, well, just another one, because in recent times we have shown such a blatant disregard for our Constitution, our institutions, our people, you know. So, I mean...
So, George, when are we going to stop? Because there have been many breaches, we're going to let the other one stop?
No.
George, I've remained silent for the last year and a half because I didn't want it to appear that I left office and I wanted to quickly make, complaints. Yes. I didn't want that to happen. The gentleman approached me. It engaged me, engaged my mind, and that's the reason why I did what I had to do. As a lawyer, I was approached and I to represent him, and I took on the matter.
Let me share with you some comments on Facebook here. Somebody's, Andrea's St. B says, process in place. In Grenada, does anyone care about process? Seems everyone's doing their own thing at all levels. Okay.
Well, in this case, I am saying there is an elaborate process. The reason is because the poor people, the farmers, are who this act was meant to protect, their interests. There's an elaborate process to make sure you have a plan going forward every single year, and to make sure that your business accounts are audited every single year promptly, not by anybody, but by the director of audit.
How much is it, Mickerman Alexander, how much is it costing taxpayers to do that inquiry?
That's what I want to know.
You want to know that too?
That's what I want to know.
Mickerman, he wants to know that too.
Yes, because the director of audit is already paid, and the director of audit has his or her staff, and the Constitution vests the director of audit with, hear my point now, with protection from any interference by the political directorate. So that person can very objectively do the report and supervise properly.
Bernard Gilbert says the minister getting his math wrong, so he not so bright after all. Earl Joseph Maitland says, thank you for standing with our people to pursue justice, Integrity in Public Life Act. The Integrity Commission acts contrary to Schedule 6 of the same act. Who's investigating them?
Well, that's a question. Well, the court has, to answer that, the court has superintendents of all of these things. That's the reason why I filed action in court. So the court would look at what has happened and make a pronouncement. That's the final bastion.
Bernard says, great job for standing up for the voiceless. Cajecton, try and get a lot more people to stand up for the voiceless. People are very frustrated out there right now.
George, I am with the teachers regarding the pension. I'm with the teachers regarding the salary deduction, which again I have filed in court. I deem that as unconstitutional, regardless what anybody says. And we are going after the pension story, which has been there for 30 odd years. Nobody wants to deal with that issue. Everybody is ducking it. But the court is going to deal with it.
Do you sense that there's a move afoot on behalf of the Grenadian people to become a little bit more concerned? You know, a lot of the stuff we hear.
I think so.
You're sensing a change?
I think so. And the reason why I'm here today is to make sure that we as Grenadian people, we stand up for what belongs to us.
Yeah.
We can't just capitulate.
I think the people, to a large extent, have forgotten their rights. They are our government. We hire these. We pay these people.
That's the point. That's the point.
And they need to be reminded of that.
Well, they need to know who they are responsible to. It's a government. It's supposed to be a government of the people, by the people.
Let me toss a googly at you right now. There are a lot of people out there who have concerns. which need to be dealt with in a legal way. Kaji, you're a lawyer. Kaji, there are a lot of people out there who cannot afford to take a matter
to court. Yes.
Talk about that.
Well, it goes two ways. For example, if it is a
yes,
matter...
there are a lot of lawyers who provide pro bono.
No, I'm coming to that.
Okay.
If it's a matter which, and I know there are several colleagues of mine who are taking the same approach. If it's a matter that we deem to be of national significance and importance, I know for sure there are several of us who will do it without charging. Because, for example, the matter with the huge matter with the pensions, Mr. Bristol and I are working on it, and we are not going to be asking for fees of the unions on that because we think it's a national issue, right? There are several other lawyers who adopt that approach. On the other hand, we have to understand, the public needs to understand that it is a business, George. It's a business. It's a way of life. It's a person's livelihood. So one should not be trying to come down on a young person who's trying to make a living being a lawyer and can't expect them to just do it for free.
Yeah. And like I said, there are a lot of lawyers who do pro bono work. Tessa Barry on Rumble Chat says, who presents the board with the information to look at, and can that person give the board the information they want?
Yes, but that's where the CEO comes in. That's the reason why I'm saying the CEO is about 3 rungs down the ladder in terms of responsibility. Because the CEO sits in the meetings of the board. So I expect the board to give him directions. And they would meet from time to time, I think every month, and make sure that they get what they want of the CEO or get rid of the CEO. You can't sit back and say the CEO didn't give me. Get another CEO.
You know, I know that when a matter is in court, people who are involved are usually reluctant to speak.
Yes.
Okay. But within the last couple of months, I did have the chairperson of the Integrity Commission, Lady Anandi Trotman, sitting in the same chair you are. And she was quite open with me. And you know, if we had her sitting here today, what would you like to ask her?
What caused the Integrity Commission to commence the so-called investigation inquiry? What really caused it?
You know, Kaji, I'm going to, hold on a minute. I want you to dictate that because I'm going to sit down here right now like a fresh little boy and write this thing. What caused?
What really caused?
Yeah.
The Integrity Commission.
Yeah.
To decide to commence.
Yeah.
The action. I wouldn't call it an inquiry or whatever it is. And the action that they have chosen.
You know, I'm going to pursue that. I'm curious. Okay? And I like both sides to have their say. You're getting your stuff off your chest this morning. And I hope she'll be able to answer. Again, I said, you know, when matters are in court, people are sometimes a little bit defensive. Yeah. Thank you very much, Mr. Hood. You glad you came? Are you glad you came?
I'm very glad I came. At least my client's position is out there a bit.
Yeah.
I know he has written to the Prime Minister, to the Minister, challenging certain things that were said.
Are you expecting a response?
Yes, I expect a response.
Yeah.
Some way or the other.
Okay.
Maybe a deflective one or whatever, but I expect a response.
And perhaps when you do get that response, we'll have some more to talk about.
That's a possibility.
Possible.
But the matter is in court. We haven't had a date as yet for the matter. And a part of the reason is because we don't have courts.
Please, don't give me another headache.
So I'm not blaming the judges or the registry. It's simply because really we don't have sufficient courts to deal with it. So the matters are backed up. Even criminal matters are backed up.
Okay, so you outlined a little while ago you're with the unions on pension, you're with the unions on salaries. Who else is it you're with?
I am with Mr. Edwards on the unfair dismissal. Unfair dismissal.
Unfair dismissal.
It's already before the Labor Commissioner, and we have this integrity commission matter being pursued.
And are you with the lawyers on courts?
The
lawyers on the courts?
Well, yeah, we all have been complaining, but I just don't think that dressing up and standing up in the courtyard is an effective way.
You know that caught my attention, and I'll tell you something. They did their protest at about 9 o'clock one morning. Okay, the day before, the president of the association was sitting in your chair here. Okay, now 9 o'clock in the morning, I am on the air. I don't get off until about 10 o'clock. So I wasn't able to get down to the courthouse until about 11 o'clock. Casually, when I got, there was nobody there. There was like a security guard. She went, "Who are you looking for?" Who are you looking for? I thought these folks were protesting, and I expected it might have lasted, well, a day.
That's why I said I didn't think it was effective, because they were standing there, but I wasn't around. I had another engagement. But then just after that, they were rushing to go to court. I remember a time when we felt sufficiently strongly about a matter in the Hugh Wildman days, and we refused to go to court for a period of time.
Okay, hold on a sec. Some more comments here. Slowly but surely, our country will stand united. The arms of government will be forced to be independent, so says Earl Joseph Maitland. Wendy Ann Farry Simon says, Mr. Hood, I point fingers to all of you for the government's behavior. This man should be grounded long ago. Too much long rope he got. Earl Maitland says, no courts. Strategy to delay justice by the Prime Minister, I assume. Ernesto Jose says, Mr. G, just a cricket update. England 260 for 6 wickets. Thanks, Kaji. Thanks for coming, sir. I appreciate your time.
Well.
And you're going to keep us?
Anytime. Well, you have my number, George. So.
Yeah, you have my number too, sir. When you're driving by, at least call up and you throw a roti up here for me.
Okay.
Or something.
Will do.
Thank you very much. Mr. Cajecton Hood, former Attorney General of Grenada, talking with us there about his concerns about the investigation, which I don't know. I'm not sure if the investigation is currently underway or about to get underway or what. But anyhow, he has promised us that he'll keep us informed. To those of you whose comments I didn't get to, I'm terribly sorry. But coming up next, I want to do 2 things. One, I want to run you that post-cabinet briefing which was held by the Minister with responsibility for climate resilience. Because like Dr. Thomas mentioned earlier on this morning, a lot was said at that conference about what Grenada is actually doing regarding the climate change issue. And a couple of eye-openers in there. So we're going to get to that. But first, we have to take a little break here. And I do hope you'll stick around.
I'm always on the move. Training, traveling, competing.
A commemorative postage stamp.
So it's good to know I have Co-op Bank in the palm of my hand.
Introducing e-banking, one of many customer convenience services from Grenada Cooperative Bank, and there's more to come.
It's swift, simple, and secure.
Welcome home. Grenadian General Insurance Company, strength and stability. Grenadian General Insurance Company. Tell your friends, tell your family. We cover householders comprehensive. Motor and even fire too. Contractors all risk burglary. Public liability. Professional indemnity. Directors liability. And wait, we still have more. Come and find out more what you're waiting for. Grenadian
located on Scott Street, St. George's. For more information, call 440-2434.
Tell everybody.
Juve chocolates, cocoa nibs, and cocoa balls from Diamond Estate Grenada are now available at Amazon.com, Amazon.ca, Amazon.co.uk, and GrenadaMarket.com. Try the sensational touch of nutmeg and a touch of ginger chocolates, 75% dark and rich, 100% pure cocoa, and their 60% dark and sweet chocolate bars today. Amazon Prime members enjoy free shipping on these orders in the USA, Canada, and Europe. GrenadaMarket.com. When you can't come to the island, the products of the island will come to you.
So tell me now, who's coming to talk with me after we beat the stuffing out of the Brits today? Uh-oh. I hope John and Carrie Koo is not listening, and Dennis. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Now I imagine they're probably watching the game. Folks, I'd like you now to spend about half an hour listening to the Minister of Climate Change Resilience, Simon Steil, as he addressed the post-cabinet briefing this week. And then after that, I think I'm going to have some time to squeeze that statement by Valerie Thompson in, that statement which was issued on Independence Day, which opened a lot of eyes in this place. Okay, but first, let's get to Senator Steil.
Thank you very much, Philomena, and a very warm good morning to our listening and viewing audience. So as Philomena outlined, there are many missions taking place here in Grenada right now relating to the Ministry of Climate Resilience. So I will run through the four specific ones that are taking place: the New York University mission, the UN Environment CDB mission, GIZ, and the IMF and World Bank. And what these all have in common, well, with the exception of the IMF and World Bank, what the other three missions all have in common are these are GCF Green Climate Fund funded projects. So starting first of all with the New York University mission, this is to establish St. George's as the first climate smart, climate resilient city within the region. We've spoken on this before. The NYU team, which is a world-leading urban planning unit, they have projects all around the world, bring an immense amount of experience and knowledge to this project, to us here in Grenada. And this is their fourth mission to Grenada since the inception of this project. This current mission is led by Dr. Shlomo Angel, together with the project coordinator, Patrick Lamson Hall. And they bring with them a team of engineers and specialists, and they're doing a deep dive into the different ministries that are impacted by this project, in addition to engaging with multiple stakeholders. The process that is being used is highly inclusive and collaborative with all stakeholders. So the solutions that we come up with will be Grenadian-centric. It is reflective of our priorities, our needs, and our solutions, with the support, with the technical guidance from the technical team. So we are still at the pre-feasibility stage, gathering data that will inform the 9 projects that have been identified. And again, these have been presented on previous occasions, but they include the carénage, looking at the high vulnerability of the carénage. It's an important component to not just historically, but as a center of commerce, center of activity, but protecting it from sea level rise. And in addition to that, flooding. The carénage, low-lying area with the elevated area behind it is actually part of a watershed. So there's significant runoff with flooding, which is a flood risk to the area. So how we can provide solutions to protect against that. There is a southern corridor between the town of St. George and the airport. Again, there's sections of that that are highly vulnerable to climate change. So whether it's looking at widening the road, defending that corridor, but linking that to another component, which is an urban development plan. And looking at issues such as traffic congestion, transportation within the area. So looking at interventions that will include road widening and the creation of alternative routes to alleviate traffic and increase traffic flow and efficiency, a top priority for all of us. Then the airport, the runway is at sea level. Parts of the runway are vulnerable to sea level rise and ingress from the sea. So looking at how to defend some of those vulnerable areas. St. George's University constitutes 20% of our gross domestic product, an important economic engine for us. So working together with St. George's University as to how we can build greater resilience in their operations to ensure in the event of a severe weather event, they can recover as quickly as possible, so their contributions to the economy, to Grenadian society, is as fast and as efficient as possible. Other areas include sewage for the south. We all know the challenges that we face there, and it's an opportunity for us to identify solutions and address our sewage outfall issues in the south. Also included within the project, but not here in the town of St. George, is the St. Andrews area, specifically the Soubise Road, which the Soubise area, which we know is currently not under threat, but we're actually seeing the effects of sea level rise to the communities there and some of the interventions that are required. During this mission, the team also visited the Soutez area. Although we have addressed issues lower down in the bay in terms of sea ingress with the breakwater project, and we've seen the significant recovery of the beach in that area, there are other areas higher up the bay that are also under threat. So looking at interventions that can be employed to address those vulnerabilities. Then the other two areas, a number of community-based projects. This will touch communities up and down the country, specific interventions there that will build greater resilience at a community level. And then the final point is capacity building. How can we as Grenadians in the medium and long run have the knowledge, have the experience to find solutions for the climate change challenges that we are facing. As we know, climate change is not a short-term thing. Climate change is here to stay. So although there is significant international attention and resources for us to build resilience at this time, we have to be able to build that capacity ourselves when international attention wanes, so that we can make the necessary interventions that we need for the future. This project, it gives us an opportunity to not only address our climate vulnerabilities, but it also gives us an opportunity to address many of our national development priorities. So whether that's sewage, whether that's traffic congestion, whether that's sea defences, etc. So this is a very, very important project for us. And the team, as their fourth mission, have already made a number of critical observations. Rain gauges, sea level rise gauges were installed on previous missions. So the team is starting to build a picture of the dynamics that will speak to flooding and sea level rise and sea ingress. And some of those observations are quite startling. They ran 2 models, and they're using specialists, actually NASA scientists, to provide interpretation data and modeling for this project. But they ran 2 models, one out to 2050 and the other out to 2080, so looking at medium and long-term projections. And we're seeing within the 2050 model a sea level rise of over 5 feet. And then at 2080, in excess of 7 feet. So all areas that are at sea level, such as the Carénage, such as Grand Anse, such as Soubise, just to name 3 of the areas that focused on in the project, we can see just how vulnerable those areas are. Now, they've taken that further to look at specific vulnerabilities, and the first, and this is seen as a priority area, is the Carénage. We see as early as 2021, within the next 3 years, regular high water flooding. So whether this is from excessive rainfall, we've already seen areas such as Tantine, etc., which are flooded very easily under high rainfall conditions. And in terms of sea surges, we're going to see a increased frequency of events there. The port, certainly by 2050, again, high level of vulnerability together with Grand Anse. So they're starting to draw out the specific data that will speak to the solutions that are required for that. Regarding the urban expansion, urban development plan, observations have been made as to priority roads, which interventions would be required in order to alleviate some of our traffic congestion issues. And in doing so, speak to reducing our greenhouse gas emissions, which is a critical part of the process. And again, looking at short-term, medium-term, and long-term road expansion initiatives, which will speak to the urban sprawl as St. George's, as the town of St. George's expands further east. What is required, what infrastructure is required to facilitate that planned development. So some phenomenal work is already taking place. Now, we've been told on many occasions that what we're trying to achieve with this project is far too ambitious and unrealistic. And the response that we continue to give is with the extreme threat that climate change presents us with. And we're already seeing the negative impacts of that. We can do nothing other than come up with ambitious plans to address it. We have no choice, and the data is showing us the need for fast action on these projects. Now, the challenge for us isn't going to be in collecting data, isn't going to be in developing the solutions. It's going to be in how do we finance these projects. As a collective, we estimate that the 9 project areas that are identified will equate to project values of many, many hundreds of millions of dollars. So significant investment is required. We don't have the local resources to fund these, which is why we are working so closely with institutions such as the Green Climate Fund, who have facilities available, financing facilities, to provide us with significant grant support for those projects that we can demonstrate the climate rationale, the climate change rationale, and concessionary loans, together with other agencies. So the Green Climate Fund has an important role to play within this, and why it is so important for us to collect the necessary data to build the arguments for these projects. But at the end of this, what we will have is a significant pipeline of bankable projects which adhere to the criteria of the funding requirements of the GCF and other international funding institutions that we can bring to those markets to seek the necessary resources to cover these projects. But what we're not doing is waiting for the completion of all of these studies before we go out to market. And one example of how we're able to, and have already achieved some quick wins with this, is identifying some immediate opportunities where there are technical needs locally, in addition to funding opportunities. And one such one is an energy efficiency project, which we're partnering, again, through the Green Climate Fund, but with UN Environment, with the Caribbean Development Bank, with technical support from New York University. And there are three components to this project. One is a public lighting project to move from the energy inefficient sodium light bulbs that are currently used for our public lighting to energy efficient LED units supplied by renewable energy solar fields that will be distributed on public buildings throughout the country, and then lighting and cooling for public buildings. And the successful completion of this project will significantly reduce our public lighting and energy bill, which runs in the region of $7+ million a year. The second component is for the private sector, providing concessional loan facilities for the private sector to be able to implement energy efficiency solutions which will reduce their operating costs, improve their competitiveness. And then the third component are policy recommendations which will ensure Grenada is on a sustainable path to energy efficiency. Now, the UN Environment and CDB team are here in Grenada now. We're scheduled to submit a formal proposal to the Green Climate Fund for funding for this project by the end of this month, with a decision in the middle of the year, June, July. So a very, very quick win. If we are successful in our application, the value of this project will be somewhere in the region of $25 million. So a significant project, and one that is being paired off from the Climate Resilient City project. Then moving on to the mission by the IMF and the World Bank. This is part of a climate change policy assessment. The IMF and World Bank team were here last week. They conclude their mission this week, and Grenada is one of 3 countries that have been chosen to pilot this activity, where an assessment of all of our climate change policies, all of our initiatives to build greater climate resilience, and the cost of that is linked to our macro fiscal framework. So ensuring that the investments that we make in resilience tie in directly to that fiscal framework. So what we are doing isn't going to bankrupt the country, is fiscally responsible, but is also responsive to our climate resilience building needs and aligning those two. So this is the synchronizing of this will provide us with the information we make in terms of prioritizing projects, prioritizing activities, and how we schedule the investments that are required. As I said earlier, we are seeking in the first run grant funding, free monies that will not have a negative impact on that fiscal framework. But we also need to consider concessional loans, low-cost loans that are also available that will help us to finance our resilience programs, but ensuring they fit into that fiscal framework. So those are the missions that are taking place right now. I'd like us to move on to the importation ban of single-use handled plastic shopping bags. The importation ban for the single-use carrier bags came into force on the 1st of February this year. And this is part of government's strategy to reducing plastics pollution. We all know of the significant negative environmental and health impacts that plastics and styrofoam have on our communities, on our environment. So with this latest ban, importers will have 10 months to deplete the inventories they currently hold of single-use carrier bags. So the second phase of the ban will come into effect on the 1st of December of this year, where it will be illegal for those importers, those suppliers, to supply and to sell carrier bags to retailers, to vendors, to shops. Then the third phase will kick in exactly a year from now on the 1st of February 2020, where it'll be illegal for shops, vendors, retailers to supply plastic bags. So by February of 2020, there should be no more single-use carrier bags in the state of Grenada. Alternatives are already being sourced, so whether these are reusable bags, biodegradable bags, but alternatives are already being sourced by importers. And over the course of this transition period, which is going to take us 12 months, we will see a increase, an uplift in those alternatives and the availability of those alternatives in stores up and down the country, and promotional activities led by the private sector, led by the importers, led by the retailers, so that there is a smooth transition come the 1st of February 2020. Now, this is also, as I said, it's part of our wider strategy. The next ban that will come into effect speaks to styrofoam. The importation ban on styrofoam, specified styrofoam products, came into effect in September of last year. So that's banning the importation of those products. From the 1st of March this year, it will be illegal for those importers to sell styrofoam products to vendors, to retailers. And then the third phase, the final phase, will kick in with a ban of use of all specified styrofoam products by the 1st of April 2019. So by April, there should be no more those specified styrofoam products, whether they are cups, food containers, etc., available in the state of Grenada, which will be a major achievement. We are sensitive to the cost implications of some of the alternatives that are available on the market, and also the quality of some of those products. So we are working with the Bureau of Standards, with importers, in establishing standards so that the most cost-effective and the most suitable alternative products are available for use in Grenada. So that is an ongoing process for us all. Now, moving on to solid waste. Cabinet was updated of where we are in the tendering process for the issuing of new contracts for street cleaning and for garbage collection. So that process has already started. So half of all contracts for street cleaners and garbage collection contractors, new contracts will be issued by the first half of this year. And then the remainder of those contracts will be issued by the end of the year. And contracts will be awarded based on the performance of existing contractors. They have to meet minimum performance criteria, in addition to other selection criteria for either the renewal of contracts. So those existing contractors who adhere to those criteria, who are competitive, their contracts will be renewed on new terms which reflect the current garbage collection, street cleaning requirements. Things have changed since the issuing of those initial licenses. Or those who haven't performed or who do not meet the criteria, then new contracts will be issued to new suppliers. What we've found, now that we've come to the end of this cycle, some of those contracts have been in effect for the last 7 or 8 years. There are issues with aging equipment. So some of the garbage trucks, issues with maintaining the old equipment, increased occurrences of breakdowns, etc. But what we will expect is on the issuing of new contracts, those successful contracts will then have the means to then go to the bank, to lending institutions, to procure replacement equipment for that old equipment. So what we will see at the end of this process is a reinvestment in that critical equipment that's required for efficient garbage collection. And we'll see some of the challenges that we're facing in certain communities. We will see an increase, an improved level of service. So we're going to see, as the year progresses, improvements in service as contractors invest again in their equipment plant. But what we are doing with the Solid Waste Management Authority is putting other measures in place. So where there are deficiencies in certain communities, to put in interim solutions to ensure that a basic level of service is maintained. We will also be looking at the enforcement of the laws concerning the collection of commercial waste. Businesses are obligated to make their own arrangements with private collection contractors for the collection of business-related waste. What we're finding are many businesses are not following that requirement, are using public collection facilities, which puts an unnecessary burden on the Solid Waste Management Authority. So the taxpayer is effectively funding the collection of those business owners. So through the enforcement of the Litter Abatement Act, we will be enforcing the fines, and those fines are significant for business owners who do not follow the law and are not making their own private arrangements for the collection of their garbage. And speaking to the enforcement of the Litter Abatement Act, the recently announced deployment, the training and then the future deployment of the 60 traffic wardens. Those traffic wardens will also have the designation of being authorized litter wardens also. So we see that as the thrust and the missing piece in the implementation of the Litter Abatement Act. So we will again be enforcing the law in this regard. And it's important to remind the general public that we all have a responsibility, a personal responsibility to in terms of addressing indiscriminate littering. But the law is there, there are carrots there, the law, fines, penalties are there as the stick, and they will be enforced. And there is a specific issue that has been brought to our attention with indiscriminate dumping at the Pearls Airport site. Significant dumping. There is only one authorized dump on mainland Grenada, and that is Perseverance. That is the only site for the disposal of waste materials. So working through the Ministry of Health, signs will be posted at that site to make it very clear, so anybody pleading ignorance, that issue will be addressed. There'll be clear signage to say that it is illegal to dump in that area. Through the Solid Waste Management Authority, we will clear up that area, but working with the local community, working with local intelligence, we will be looking out for those persons breaking the law and dumping in that area. And again, the penalties that are associated with this, which are fines in excess of $10,000, will be enforced. So using local intelligence, identifying those persons responsible for this illegal act will be prosecuted. We can't continue along these lines.
I'm here. I'm here. Just caught with my pants down. Anyway, folks, I'll tell you what. There's been so much happening here. You guys are really keeping me busy this morning. I mean, busy. Now, let me turn here first to Rumble Chat, where my good friend and Gary Koo says, this is Dennis. Dennis says, I'm not a cricket fan, George, but England are 11-3 ahead in the rugby. I see. Somebody's not watching cricket this morning. Somebody's watching rugby. Now, let's get back here to Facebook for just a minute. Nigel, thank you for chiming in, Nigel. Nigel says, good morning, George. Please be aware that the difference of your levels between your mic volume, the volume level of your guests and mic, and the volume level of commercials is horrible. Thank you very much, sir. Working on it. Rome was not built in a day. We're trying, but I do appreciate you giving me a little heads up there. Mickaman Alexander says, climate smart city with a national library in a state of dilapidated conditions. Eh? Then Margaret says, notice the emphasis on fund, eh? Just noting, she's referring to Mr. Steil's presentation there. Earl says, after collecting all year ridiculous amounts of taxes, why does our country never have any funds to finance anything of national importance? I don't know, but you guys have noticed. Mickaman Alexander says there's an international organization that wanted to make the town of St. George's a World Heritage Site. They wanted to spend money to restore all those damaged buildings. You remember, eh? Okay. Lawrence Kruthoff says, hi, Mr. George. I'm watching and listening here in London. Are you hearing what I'm listening to? I'm hearing what you're listening to, Lawrence. Thanks. Ryan says, yippee, no more plastic bags in Grenada. Ain't that good news? Again, like Spencer Thomas was saying earlier on, Dr. Thomas said, it all boils down to enforcement. Enforcement. And we're not just talking about enforcement when it comes to the environment. Now we're talking about enforcement in a lot of different areas in this country. Norma Jeremiah says, who's fooling who in Grenada? Huh? Enough said. Margaret says, but wait a minute. Did this learned minister say that they're now going to look at alternatives for single-use plastics? So you put the ban on plastic in the first place, and then for the solution, and not, you got me there. Lord have mercy. Book sense is not common sense and truth. And all you want to be taken seriously? Mags. And Kipling says, always putting the cart before the horse. That's my Grenada. Pilgrims, I'll tell you what. Quick little break, very quick little break, and then we'll come back with Valerie.
Together with you, our customers, we energize our community.
Together with you, we energize our economy.
We are working together to give our nation a better tomorrow.
With you, we energize our future. Together, we energize our nation.
Thank you for partnering with us as we energize our Speyside.
GrenLec, energizing our Grenada.
Alrighty, folks. Now, let's get serious to wrap up the program. Very serious. Just this past week, Grenada celebrated its 40th anniversary of independence. A lot of celebration was being done, okay? But at the same time, there were a lot of questions being asked. The major question was, are we really independent? In the run-up to the referendum, which took place in November, you heard a lot of talk about shedding the bonds of colonialism. Well, there's a lady who provided us with a statement which she wanted aired on Independence Day, and we did air it. But that was during the week. That was on Thursday. And I know that a lot of you out there in the diaspora were at work and unable to listen. So I thought that I would run it for you again this morning. My dear friends, social activist Valerie Thompson.
My fellow Grenadians, I again address you on this auspicious occasion of our 45th anniversary of independence. I must first inform you that I speak on my own behalf as an activist on issues of national importance, and I do not represent any group, political or otherwise. 45 years ago, 1974, Grenada gained its independence from Britain, and our Grenada flag was hoisted. Now, 45 years later, 2019, I fear that we would someday be seeing our flag taken down and replaced by that of a foreign nation. My fellow citizens, when one follows what China has been doing all over the world, especially in third world countries, one should be concerned. To begin with, our government is withholding information from us. It does not keep us informed. It is as if our country is a private entity with the government as the proprietor. Our government does whatever it wishes without any consideration as to whether it has the authority or not. Take, for example, the matter of deductions from the salaries of teachers. It is all about power, with little or no regard to our Constitution. The Grenada government launched its National Sustainable Development Plan 2035 in May of 2015, but sometime in 2018 we had to learn from the Chinese, not from the Grenada government, that they had written a development plan for Grenada. The South China Post report claims that a China-drafted development plan for Grenada would give Chinese companies better access to future investment and infrastructure projects. Note, who would benefit from our plan? The Chinese, not Grenadians. The Chinese team warned in one document that the development envisioned by Blueprint would not be achieved unless the Grenadian government took strong, effective measures to ensure and protect the interests of foreign investors. Note again, Grenadian government to ensure and protect the interests of foreign investors, not Grenadians. Lou Smith, on a Beyond the Headlines program, asked the Prime Minister about this Chinese development plan for Grenada, and he said that Grenada was seeking funding and the Chinese were willing to provide at least a draft after consultation with persons in the country. Our Prime Minister also said that any national plan would have to be endorsed by the people of Grenada and that the final decision would have to be vested in the said people of Grenada. We have not yet had an opportunity to endorse any plan, but while we, the Grenadians, continue to hold consultations on a National Sustainable Development Plan 2035, it appears that the development plan by China is being implemented. We find ourselves being invaded by Chinese individuals working on many projects all over our country. We do not understand why so many of them are here when so many of our people are unemployed. They bring in their vehicles, equipment, materials, and their workers. It is alleged that the Chinese were also given 5 of our heritage buildings for development as bolt projects. These are the Governor General's residence, the York House, the Public Library, the Museum, and the Melville Street Barracks. Will our government please confirm or deny this allegation? BOLT is an acronym for Build, Own, Lease, and Transfer. Any government, even entertaining such an idea with any foreign entity, is grossly irresponsible, foolish, unpatriotic, and not worth its salt. Our government needs to come clean with our people and tell us what is going on. Tell us what agreements have been signed with China. Tell us how much money we owe China and how these loans are to be repaid. Are we on our way to being recolonized, this time by China? Should we expect to wake up one morning and find that the flag of Grenada has been replaced by the flag of China? My Grenadian people, do you really believe that our government is working in our best interest? It is quite clear that they do not care about what happens to Grenada and its people. We may all have been already signed away to China by these individuals whom we have entrusted to manage our affairs. Recently, I heard a very vocal supporter of the government say on a radio program that he would be happy if our country was taken over by China, as we would see more development than we presently do. Could anyone imagine a Grenadian making such a statement? Had he said the same thing 45 years ago, he would have gotten bottle and stone in his tail. Where is the Grenadian pride? It is obvious that he is disillusioned by the lack of progress after being independent for the past 45 years. Yet, we have a government with a "Don't Stop the Progress" slogan. Yes, we got independence from Britain, so why should we wish to be dependent again, especially on China, a communist nation? Does that gentleman not know that there is no freedom of speech in China? Any such opinion expressed by a citizen of China against his country may gain him the death penalty by firing squad. Grenadians, we cannot say that we are independent yet depend on others for our survival. It is obvious that we are not doing enough. Imagine 45 years old and we are still begging and being stifled by debt when we should be planting, growing and feeding ourselves. Do you remember that a female minister told us a few years ago that we must not bite the hand that feeds us? She may have had a point, as they do indicate to the outside world that our mouths are on the ground. We still need support when we should be strong enough to stand proudly. We should not be dependent on tourists to come and foreign investors to buy us out or run us from our beaches. We have been blessed with so much of what others wish they had. We must be appreciative, thankful, and closely guard what we still have, or it would be snatched away from us while we helplessly look on. We must open our eyes widely and see what is happening around us. Do not be fooled by politicians who use their power to take care of themselves while keeping the masses dependent on them. As long as monies are dangled in front of them, it appears that they just sign on the dotted line without giving any consideration as to if and how to repay. Look, listen, search, and read to gain knowledge. When a neighbor's house is on fire, we must wet our own. All over the world, China is taking the properties of other nations. In 2018 alone, China acquired over 20 deep water and airports from several countries around the world. How did this happen? China lends massive amounts of monies to countries which could never repay. Some people are calling it debt trap diplomacy or debt colonialism. Why should Grenada be any different? It offers enticing loans to countries, especially developing countries, and when they default, not if, but when, they are pressured into surrendering control of assets. Many of these projects are linked to the Belt and Road Initiative being pushed by China through massive infrastructural projects such as roads, airports, deep water ports, and bridges. Why should Grenada be different? So far, over 70 countries appear to benefit from multi-million-dollar soft loans from China. But when some of the projects fail, those countries become even more dependent on China, which now owns ports in Africa, Latin America, Asia, and the Middle East. Why should Grenada be different? Grenadians, we should be doing better than we are at present, but getting deeper in debt with China is like committing suicide. We have to produce to prosper, plant to eat, refuse the feeding from China, and fight to save our country. It belongs to us, the Grenadian people. On this, our 45th anniversary of independence, let us ponder on the words of our national anthem. Hail Grenada, land of ours, we pledge ourselves to thee, head, heart, and hands in unity to reach our destiny. Ever conscious of God, being proud of our heritage, may we with faith and courage aspire, build, advance as one people, one family. God bless our nation. Happy independence, my fellow citizens. I thank you.
Okay, there she goes. Valerie Thompson. Thank you very much, Valerie. And man, in the same manner they responded on Thursday when we initially played that piece. They're also fired up today. Couple of comments here on the box. Kipling says, well, well, well. We like it so? Talk with no action, while Grenadians are slowly becoming foreigners in their own country. So says Kipling. Then Ryan says, interesting lady. She speaks the truth. Yes, we can't be independent when we depend on China, or anybody else for that matter, Ryan. Dennis Perkins says, she is so right. Now that's Dennis on Facebook, but over here, let's see, over here on Rumble Chat, he says, congratulations to the Windies. Very well done. And he is obviously responding to the fact that the Windies were all out for 277. At least that's what Opie told us here on Shoutbox. Good work, Windies, says Opie. Then Wilfred Jones says, Grenada just don't care. Huh. Sad story, but you're right, sir. China is weaponizing itself, says Ryan. And Anthony Howard says, great presentation by Valerie. Valerie, I'm sure you're happy to hear that. Earl Maitland says, George, I would love to meet this patriot. It will be a pleasure. Well, next time she's coming to Grenada, we'll try and see if we can set something up. Ryan is also saying here some irksome buffering, Gigi. You know, I was just speaking to Earl a few minutes ago, and he said, was it Earl? No, it wasn't Earl. I was speaking to Deanna a little while ago, and she said that there was some buffering. I tell you guys, I'm amazed. Things are going so clockwork-wise here in the studio. No signs of any buffering or anything. Everything's just leaving here beautifully. But I'm really surprised to hear that you guys are having some buffering. Just want to remind you, it's going to be up on Facebook shortly after the program, and later on this afternoon, also going to be up on YouTube. Let me see. Who am I missing here? Oh, yeah, there was a comment here by Anthony Howard. Anthony is referring to the piece from Senator Simon Steil. He says, great initiatives by government on banning the importation of single-use plastic and styrofoam containers. I'm awaiting future government initiatives to address the illegal discharge of human waste into our coastal waters by the thousands of yachts that anchor in our coastal waters. When we are writing legislation to protect pure Grenada, we need to focus on all bad actors, not just those that were born and live on the landmass of Grenada. Very important point, sir. Very important point. Woo! Time, 12:05. George, you're late. George is late. Let me take one quick little break and then say thank you so much for joining us.
I'm always on the move. Training, traveling, competing.
A commemorative postage stamp.
So it's good to know I have Quad Bank in the palm of my hand.
Introducing e-banking, one of many customer convenience services from Grenada Cooperative Bank, and there's more to come.
It's swift, simple, and secure.
Welcome home.
Okay, here we go. Parting word from the Holy Scriptures. And this one comes to you from the book of Psalms, Psalm number 68, 19, 20, and 21. Praise be to the Lord, to God, our Savior, who daily bears our burdens. Our God is a God who saves. From the sovereign Lord comes escape from death. Surely, God will crush the heads of his enemies, the hairy crowns of those who go on in their sins. Psalm 68, 19 to 21. That's it, folks. That's it. Thank you very much for joining us on this Sunday morning. I don't know about you, but I have had fun. This great program this morning as far as I'm concerned. Thank you so much for joining us. Remember, join us tomorrow morning and every weekday morning on GrenadaBroadcast.com for the next edition of Good Day Grenada. Hope to see you guys. God bless you.